One of the other things I've got written down to discuss in the honest conversations thing, Stu, is chopping and changing. Now, we've talked about this this kind of resoluteness born of the change of system, but then we saw in this game Godfrey starting, Wolfenden dropped, O'Shea in the middle, who's not been playing there, and also Burgess coming in for Greaves. And I've seen a few people kind of saying, well, is there too much chopping and changing? Do we need to be consistent? And I think that's a valid conversation, or at least a valid question for me to put to you. Clearly, a quick turnaround, they're going to need to be changes, but is that something we should be concerned about, that there's not a consistent kind of base, as it were?
Possibly, but I don't think that's been through choice necessarily. A lot of that has been forced upon Kieran McKenna this season. I mean, the poster boys for stability at the moment are probably Nottingham Forest, and you look at their first 11 pretty much rolls off the tongue, and they've just got this. They've been very fortunate with injuries, and they've been able to name that same 11 week after week. That's worked for them. I'm sure Kieran McKenna would like to have had a kind of a core of at least 7 or 8 that you can call upon week in, week out. But as we know, he's had various injuries in across the team, really. Having signed Godfrey, you want to get him in and up to speed. He's got to get some minutes at some point. This was 2 games in 4 days against Brighton and Man City. Man City had, as I said, got those extra 2 days rest. So I think, there needed to be some freshening up for this match. But the trade-off against getting slightly fresher legs is sort of a drop-off in a little bit of kind of team chemistry and connections and partnerships all over the pitch, which probably didn't help.
Any thoughts on that, AJ?
Basically that, to be perfectly honest. I think that it is difficult when Town have had the injury issues that they've had, and then you get players back and you also want to get them back up to speed, and you got to think, well, when are the opportunities to do that? And having players like Amari in there, well, you don't want to kind of take Amari out, even though he might be kind of more tired, because then you're switching things around again. It's such a hard balance to find. He's a good example, because I'm just thinking about, he kind of got back a little bit earlier than we expected, started against Brighton. You're thinking, well, he started against Brighton because they really needed that depth on the right side, and then he's starting again, and you can't throw Jaden Philogene in from the start because that's pretty brutal against Man City. It's so many different balances to try and find, and there has to be a bit of rotation in there. So I do think the injuries play a part. To the press release come through saying that I think Ipswich are the unluckiest team in the Premier League when it comes to things like injuries and VAR. So I think that, that is a big part, and I can understand why it is an issue, but it does kind of come with the territory as well as the Saturday, Tuesday games. And although there are a core group of players that are used to that from the EFL, it still is new to a lot of players. These are players that are used to being in a chemistry of playing Saturday more than anything at the moment, and changing that up, it is not the easiest thing to do, and they do need longer rest and recovery periods.
Yeah, you just reminded me, actually, AJ. That was something I need to turn around today. I thought it was quite interesting, that unluckiest team. There we go. Of course, chopping and changing, I hate to do it, but that is a classic after timer criticism as well, isn't it? I'm sure no one kind of, when they saw the team, went, why has he changed it? It's one of those things that when they lose 6-0, it's really easy to pick on.
For me, on the rotation thing, it's more, I can see that you need some freshening up, certainly in the high intensity areas of the team, midfield, top end of the pitch. Nathan Broadhead isn't someone that's churned out 90 minutes back to back very much during his Ipswich career, so that one wasn't a huge surprise. He tried to rotate with Sam Morsey over the 2 matches, with Calvin playing against Brighton, so I can see some of that side of it. It's the 3 centre halves. I think if you're kind of, it's the sort of rotation of centre halves, which sometimes I think that you want them set in stone as much as possible. Godfrey I sort of talked about as being an opportunistic signing, that I don't think they would desperately had sort of that position at the top of their wanted list, but he became available, and he was, he didn't count towards the domestic limit. He's got Premier League experience. He knows the area. He wants to come, etc., etc. But maybe, time will tell. He might end up being excellent and proving to be the difference, and hopefully that's the case. But have they created themselves a bit of a short-term headache now that suddenly you've now got to retrain Dara O'Shea to a slightly different role? And people will say centre of the three defenders isn't that much difference to right of the three, but I think it is. Some of his natural, he's been really good in that sort of right-sided of the back three role in recent weeks, and was able to kind of step out and press high, and maybe it's a little bit different when you're the kind of the sweeper role. Maybe had to sort of curb some of his natural instincts in the game. So Burgess for Greaves isn't something that we actually spoke to the manager about after the game. That kind of got lost in the chat about the match itself. So we need to find out a bit more about that, whether that's a knock for Jacob Greaves or whether that was just a little bit of rotation. I'm not sure. Obviously, Greaves wasn't on the bench, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's an injury, because we know the manager doesn't tend to have centre halves there. But it's that area of the rotation that I would sort of say, if you would say there was some part of it that's slightly unnecessary, that would be the one bit of it, I would say.